Hi everyone, this is Jim. This is a game I played at my local club last week. I had the white pieces, my opponent with the black pieces. Was a slightly lower rated player. He had a rating of 1750. My rating for this tournament is 1844, so about a 100-point difference. Anyway, I start off with e4. My opponent played c5, got knight f3, and now he goes d6. Now later on in this game, we kind of transpose into a position that could come from an accelerated dragon. So that's why I called this an accelerated dragon. But the normal way, just to let you know, the normal way of playing an accelerated dragon is to go knight c6 here. And the idea is to delay this push of the d-pawn and try and get it in one move. So you don't go d6, d5, but just go directly from d7 to d5. And that's advantageous in some lines. So the accelerated dragon would continue this way. White goes for the open Sicilian. And then black plays g6 right here. So that's the accelerated part. And now white has a choice. White can play c4, which would sort of permanently clamp down on this d6 move, or white can play with knight c3. But c4, the Maroczy bind setup, is one of the most common ways to play. Let's see, knight f6, attacking the pawn. Now knight c6, knight c3 rather, defending it. And now d6, black gives up the idea of pushing the pawn to d5 because of the advanced pawns from white. The e4 and c4 pawns really prevent d5. And he needs to open up a line for his bishop. And then bishop e2. And this would be a very standard position in the accelerated dragon. The position we get in the game would come after, say, if white played f3 here, which is a sideline, and black goes bishop g7. And this is an exact position from we get to in the game by a different move order. It's just that black chose already on move 2 to play d6. So it looks like we've got a more classical Sicilian. d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. And now the standard way of continuing here is knight to f6, attacking this pawn and forcing the knight to c3, blocking the c pawn. But he played g6. So this is where it starts to get an accelerated dragon flavor. I have a choice here, though. I don't have to play c4 here. I could continue with knight c3. And then we'd get just a normal dragon, knight f6, bishop e3, bishop g7, and f3. And this is a typical position of the Sicilian dragon, very common. So I could have played that way. And in fact, the chess engine thinks actually in this particular position, because black is already committed to d6, I don't really have to worry so much about him pushing to d5. The chess engine likes this position for white. Well, it just likes the dragon, basically, for white. But I played c4 here. I was interested in playing this Maroczy bind kind of position. It's a sort of position that I was not very good at traditionally. And I just noticed that, well, I've watched a lot of Chess Explains games, and he plays it a lot. He likes this kind of position for white. And so I've just been making a deliberate effort to try and learn how to play these positions. So whenever I have the opportunity to get into a Maroczy bind setup with white, I go for it. Okay, so I played c4 here. He went bishop g7. I went bishop e3. I don't have to worry about his knight harassing my bishop because he's already... well, he hasn't played his knight out yet, but he plays his knight out now, knight f6, and now I go f3 to prevent his knight from coming into g4 and harassing my bishop. And now this is exactly that. Oh no, two more moves. He goes knight c6 here, and I go knight c3. And now this is exactly the same position that we reached from the accelerated dragon with that move f3 and instead of bishop e2. So that's why this is this is a position that could have arisen from the accelerated dragon, I guess is the point. And the normal continuation here would be castles. Now we go bishop e2, bishop d7, and then I castle. And this would be a very standard position that has been played many times. But I suspect both of us are really out of our opening book. I mean, I've been out of my book for a while, and I'm just playing what seems like logical moves to me. And my opponent plays a6 here, so I guess he's in the same boat. This is not a book move. But it's not a bad move. I mean, it keeps my knight out of the b4 square, maybe opens up the possibility that he could push the e-pawn forward at some point, because without this threat of a knight hopping into b5, rather, without the threat of a knight hopping into b5, putting pressure on the d-pawn, this pawn is pretty secure. So anyway, it's an interesting way to play, not necessarily bad. Black does get into trouble, but it happens later. Let's see, I play queen d2, preparing, if necessary, to trade off the dark squared bishop. He goes bishop d7, and we just continue developing here some normal developing moves. Let's see, he castles, and I castle. And now he goes rook c8. So somewhere around here, this is the place in these types of positions where I normally get into trouble, because my sort of natural instinct in chess is to stir up some trouble. So I want to start taking things or pushing pawns forward or doing that kind of stuff. But the Maroczy bind position is one where really you should go kind of slow. One of your advantages as white is that you have a little more space than your opponent. So if you can do some slower maneuvers, keep up a little pressure on your opponent and avoid trades, you can often get an advantage that way. You're just trying basically to catch your opponent in an awkward position at some point because of the maneuvers he has to do with his limited space. So I just played rook ac1 here. Just kind of mirroring his rook move, defending this pawn indirectly, which sometimes comes under fire. But basically the idea is, I'm just avoiding trades and not making any committal moves at this point, and just trying to make improving moves. So this is obviously a better square for the rook. And another idea here, by the way, is dropping this knight down to c2 and just avoiding the possibility of a trade on d4, because this trade on d4 is one of the ways that Black can try and liberate his position. But anyway, Black is not going for that. Black went for knight e8 here. The chess engine does recommend, by the way, taking. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d4. Getting rid of that knight allows this bishop to come out to the e6 square, put a little pressure on this pawn, and then develop the queen out to a5. And that should be a decent position for Black, with white still having some edge. I would still continue with this same strategy of just trying to maneuver and trying to catch Black out in a bad position. So this knight e8 move, this helps me a little bit. He's trying to maneuver, and this is exactly what I want Black to do in a way. I want him to try and maneuver, and I want to try and catch him in an awkward position. So I play rook to d1 here. Now, already I was starting to have ideas about doing something active, to be honest. I was wondering, what can I do with this knight or this knight? And there were some lines where I thought it might be useful to have this pressure on the d-file. So I made another one of these kind of quiet moves, but I had some sort of active ideas behind it. Basically, I'm thinking of pushing one of these pawns forward, probably the c pawn, trying to disrupt things a little bit here and take advantage of a pin on the d-file. The chess engine, by the way, thinks that already, because of this knight e8 move, that I have some kind of advantage which I could achieve, which I could realize by taking. So the chess engine actually wants to start trading at this point and then advancing on the queen side. So that's the probably the best way to play at this point. But anyway, that's not the idea I was going for. I was going for this idea of trying to hold off on exchanges and take advantage of my space. Okay, so he continues his knight maneuver. He went to e8. Now it's coming out to c7. I went knight to d5. And he goes knight to e6. The knight on d5 is often a great square for this knight. And if he trades it off, which is possible here, I'm going to, well, let's see. I think that's an option here. Yeah, if he takes, he didn't take, but if he takes, then I would take back with the e-pawn, and I would try to get some kind of play on the e-file over here against this backwards e-pawn. That would be the idea. The chess engine says you should probably just continue trading, and we get into a position where there's heavy pieces, and the only minor piece is a light squared bishop, and I would still try and pile up on this pawn. And there's probably some slight edge for white. Again, this is not a winning advantage, but something I could play and play for an edge, play for the pressure. So instead of taking, though, he played knight to e6. So he's avoiding the trades as well. Probably a mistake from black's point of view. It eventually lands him in trouble. Let's see, I play knight b3 now. Again, I was starting to have active ideas here. I was thinking of pushing the c-pawn forward and disrupting things. I think, at some point you have to have to switch to active play, right? Anyway, he goes queen e8 here, and I go with c5. And now he makes a mistake. So up until this point, he's got a cramped position where white's a little better, but he's probably can hold with good play. After this move, he plays knight c7 here. Now there's a tactic that's winning for white. So what should he play? The best move here is to take that pawn with the knight. Knight takes c5, force some exchanges. I want to get that pawn back. Knight takes c5. Oh, I would take with the knight first. Knight takes c5. He takes c5. Bishop takes c5. And I would try and get some kind of pressure on this pawn. And he can play bishop to e6 here. And everything seems to be defended at the moment. Although the chess engine thinks with a move like queen to e3 that black or white is quite a bit better. Notice that he can't really take the b pawn here with his bishop. He's looking at it, but I have rook here with the skewer and pick up the b pawn on b7. So don't really have to worry about defending that. And maybe I can find ways to pile up on his backwards d pawn a little bit. And also getting the queen out of the way, so if he takes my knight, I can take back with the rook. That would give me the bishop pair advantage, so that would be worth something as well. Okay, anyway, the chess engine likes that position for white, but definitely after his next move, he's losing. He went knight to c7. He just retreated that knight back. He probably intends to trade off on d5 now. So there's a tactic here if you want to spot the tactic. It's white's turn to move. What's the best move for white? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now, so pause the video if you want some time to think about it. The move is knight to e7. Knight takes e7 with check. And I found this move during the game, so I was happy to have spotted this tactic. He needs to take back probably... He could take with either the queen or the knight. I think they work out about the same. He took with the knight, and now I take this pawn. And this is the point that I get my piece back because there's a fork, and in the meantime I've won 2 pawns. So I have a winning position here. Let's see. He played knight c6, so that I have to take the other knight. And then he goes bishop to e6. And it's my turn here. I played the move bishop to b6, which I think is a good move, but the chess engine says it's even better to play bishop to c4. It looks like this is, well, that rook is trapped. That's one point here. And the chess engine actually thinks that after bishop c5, it thinks that black should just give up the exchange. So this is, at this point, I'd be an exchange up and a pawn up. So that'd be pretty good for me. The more natural response here would be to play knight to e7. But there is this pin now, and that's kind of a long-lasting pin, and black's pieces are kind of tied up. So this is the first example in this game which there are several lines that I didn't play that the chess engine points out, and most of them have to do with long-lasting pins and ways to exploit them. So just to give one example here, let's see. He could, it's my turn. I play bishop to d6 here, holding on to this pawn and keeping the pin. And after this exchange on b3, I can pile up with my queen, just increasing the pressure on this pin. And it just becomes difficult for him to wiggle out. In fact, he's got to play bishop f6 in order to defend the knight. And then I can grab a pawn here. So anyway, and the line continues. The chess engine has a long line there that leads to a pretty big advantage for white, which is kind of interesting. It's not easy to calculate, or at least not one that I saw during the game, but it has to do with getting a pin and then exploiting it. And there's a couple other lines like that later on in the game. Anyway, I played bishop to b6 here instead of c5. I thought holding on to that pawn would be a good strategy. I didn't think necessarily that I could keep it because he's got a lot of pieces here. He could probably surround it and round it up at some point, but I thought I could extract something by holding onto it for a little bit, maybe force some awkward positioning of his pieces. Let's see, and he sort of lashes out here with this f5 move. I don't think this is a good idea here, but he does want to activate his pieces, but it weakens his king side, so that causes trouble later. He takes, I take, and he takes back with the rook, so he has gotten the rook to an active square. But now I can get my bishop out of the way. I wanted to free up my queen. I didn't want to have to defend that bishop all the way, all the time. And also, you know, I'm happy to force some trades. This pin here will force a trade of the bishops if I want to trade. And you know, being a pawn or two up, it's better for me to just trade the pieces off and head for an endgame. Let's see, he dropped his rook back to f6 to defend, and then I played bishop takes e6. I just wanted to continue with the trades here. There is, well, I'll find another example later. There's another example here, just to let you know. Chess Engine likes this idea of rook e1, another example of setting up a bunch of pins here. I've got 2 pins on that bishop and piling up and exploiting that pin. Let's see, I don't want to go into that one in detail. This video would get too long. Let's see, I just took, he took, and then I played rook to e1. And I was expecting just to trade all the pieces off. That was my idea of playing this way, but he played bishop e5. So I think in this part of the game I was moving a little too quickly. You know, sometimes you get confident when things are starting to go your way and you stop looking at all the possibilities. So so I'm not playing the best moves here. And my next move, knight to c5, is also not the best. So here, let's give one example. I did think about this move, f4. The Chess Engine likes this move a lot. And I did think about it as a way of forcing some trades, but I thought I was just giving up a pawn to force those trades, and I didn't want to do that. But in fact, this because of the pins along this diagonal now, on the light squared diagonal, this is winning for white. So I thought this was pretty interesting. Say he takes, I'll take back, and he takes. So he just grabbed that pawn, but now I get queen d5 in, and I've got a pin on this rook. Of course, he can defend, but, well, I can trade. Takes back, and that rook is still pinned, and I can bring another rook in, and he can defend again, and then I can play knight c5 now, and he's losing that rook, or yeah, he's losing material here in any case. So that would be winning. That f4 move is just winning because of this exploiting of the pin. And you know, I had seen that queen d5 was a threat in many cases. I was kind of waiting to find the right moment to play it, and I guess I never quite did. So anyway, I did okay in this game, but I wasn't finding the best moves there. And I think that's interesting, that idea of getting a pin and exploiting it like that. That wasn't too hard to calculate, too. That was some pretty straightforward exchanges, and then you just count how many pieces can you bring to attack the pinned piece and how many pieces does he have to defend it with. Anyway, I went knight c5 right away. I was planning to chase this rook off this diagonal and maybe come in here with check, win the bishop here if I could. But it's a little tricky to arrange. He did move the knight, or he did move the rook back to e7, so I have this check here. But well, it's not so great to him check immediately. It doesn't seem to lead to a whole lot. But I do grab the b pawn, so that works out. I mean, I keep an edge here this way. Let's see. He took on c7. I take back. He takes with this rook. Obviously, his other rook is pinned. And now I take this rook off. So I've achieved what I wanted to, in that I've managed to exchange off a lot of pieces, and I've stayed 2 pawns up. So we should be going into a winning endgame here. And there are some ideas here. I mean, I still have this check threat, so he can't take with the rook. But he can take with the queen, and that should be okay. Queen takes e7 leaves... is probably the best response by black. He actually didn't play that. He played something else. And then I would just get my knight out of trouble with knight c5. And, you know, he still has some threats. If he could get the queen here for example, that would be checkmate. So I still have to exercise some caution. But like I said, I'm 2 pawns up, pawns on both sides of the board, and I've reduced the material. So I've made a lot of progress. Let's see, the way he played it, he took back with the rook. And then I went knight c5 here. I was a little afraid of the queen check here because of the threat on the back rank. The check here I take and queen comes back with check and mate. So I decided to play it safe. He went rook e2, chasing rook e2, chasing my queen this way. And now I play the check. I figure I'll have time to defend. His king goes to h8, and then I bring my knight to e4. So that was my idea. I had spotted this idea after the knight came to c5. Then I have this way to interrupt his queen and his rook. So now he can't drop the rook back and harass my king anymore. So that was kind of a nice save, I thought. He played knight to e5. And let's see. I found a move here which I thought was pretty nice. So if you want to think about this move for a while, see if you can find an interesting move for white here. Not necessarily the best move, but one that makes some threats anyway. Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. The move that I played was queen to d4. And the threat here is actually to win his rook. His rook has no squares. All these squares are covered by the queen, the rook, the knight. The knight's covering there, the king's covering there. So I can just bring my king over to here and win that rook. That's a pretty big threat. Actually, the chess engine thinks the best move here, just to in case you had a different idea at this point, there are probably other ways to play this. The chess engine likes rook to c7 as the best move, just going directly for the attack and saying that, well, this move, rook e1 check, doesn't really gain anything. I mean, he can come over here and harass my pawns a little bit, but I have some pretty severe threats now. In fact, the chess engine thinks he should give up the exchange at this point and try and survive this position. So that's another way to play. Anyway, I went queen d4, and he went queen over to b5, holding on to his rook. And so this, but this loses directly. And in fact, in this position, there is a forced mate in 7 if you want to try and find it. I'm going to give you another chance to try and find a mate in 5, but in fact, there's a forced mate in 7. So if you want to pause the video and look for it, white's turn to move with the mate in 7. Okay, it's my turn to move, and I thought I saw a mate in 3, and I started to go for it. I went with queen d8 check first, driving his king here, and my idea for the mate in 3 was that the rook comes in next. That would be the second move. The king goes here, and then my queen goes here, checkmate. And then, but at this point, it's my turn to move. Before I played that rook move, I realized that he had this defense. He can just bring his knight back to f7 and defend against the check. So it's not a mate in 3. I just thought it was a mate in 3. So I had to stop and rethink things here. And I thought that bringing the rook in immediately, and that sort of helps him bring his knight back to where it's defending a little bit. I thought that was not the best way to proceed. So instead, I played this move, queen f6 check, taking advantage of my knight here, hitting his king. And now if his king goes to the back rank, then my rook comes down and mates him. So the king is forced to go to this square, to the h6 square. So that's how far I calculated at that point. I said, this is surely this is a good move if I come here with the check and force his king. And so I'll get to this point and I will look around for the mate. And at this point there is a mate in 5, and I managed to find it. So this is a good exercise for you. Why don't you pause the video here and see if you can find the mate in 5. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. It starts with queen f8 check. You want to drive the king further up the board. The king goes to h5. Notice the knight is controlling this square, so the king has to go to h5. And then the second move here is you use the knight to drive the king even further forward. So knight to g3 check. And if you've seen this far, you'll notice also that the knight is winning the exchange here if you don't have a mate here. So you could safely play this much, even if you didn't see the mate. And now if the king comes forward, then queen to h6 is mate. So the king can't come to this square. So the king is forced to go to g5. And now there's just a mate in 3 here. And it's a little bit tricky, but it starts with h4 check. You just keep driving the king forward. You can't go backwards. The knight's controlling these squares, the queen's controlling these squares. You can't come forward. The queen and the pawn are controlling these squares. So this is completely forced. There's only one legal move here. And now you come in with the queen check, and you force the king forward again, even giving up your knight, because the next move is a mate. And queen h2 mate, and he resigned. And also, by the way, if you're in this position and you saw the move queen to g5 check, that's also a mate. The king has nowhere to run. He can, it's just one move longer. He can block with the knight, and then queen g4, queen takes g4 is mate. But the move I played in the game, queen h2 mate, is one move quicker, and that's how the game ended. So a pretty nice finish. Hope you guys liked this video, and also, keep that in mind when you're playing one of these positions where you have the advantage in space. Sometimes you don't have to do anything dramatic. You just have to put your pieces on good squares, try and improve your position, try and keep some pressure on your opponent, and look for those opportunities when he plays less than accurate moves. Okay, that's it for this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again soon.